All right, let's talk American politics here. So Bernie Sanders looks like, unless, you know, a Bloomberg turnaround happens, Biden somehow becomes able to finish a sentence, he's going to make it eventually to being the Democrat nominee who goes up against Donald Trump. Now, these things are going to be slight problems along the way because somehow I think that Donald Trump might bring this up if you happen to be debating him not once but 3 times before the election. Here's Bernie Sanders on the American version of 60 Minutes talking about how, well, Cuba's literacy program's good.
Very opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba. But, you know, it's unfair to simply say everything is bad. You know, when Fidel Castro came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program. Is that a bad thing? Even though Fidel Castro did it?
There's a lot of dissidents imprisoned in Cuba.
That's right, and we condemn that.
Oh, Rita, this bloke. Those that clutch their pearls professionally on television wanted desperately to say that Sanders is the Democrat version of Trump. Hence why the bloke who ran the John McCain campaign that lost says this.
What I think a lot of people are seeing is a rise now of a second cult of personality in the country. And if there's only one thing that's worse for democracy than one cult of personality in the country, I would argue maybe it's 2.
And as for Mayor Pete, who has single-digit support in the African-American community, someone, whoever puts the chip in the back of his head every day, came up with this.
Of course, literacy is a good thing, but why are we spotlighting the literacy programs of a brutal dictator instead of being unambiguous in our condemnation about the way he has treated his own people?
And Chris Christie has a job as a pundit on American television where, apart from anything else, it's particularly cruel that they put the desk as low as they do. But this is what he has to say about the media not quite going after Sanders hard enough.
So that's one problem. Who's going to do the vetting? The press doesn't seem to want to do the vetting on this. Secondly, which of those candidates is going to show the aptitude, George, to really vet Bernie Sanders?
All right, so let's unpack a couple of things to all of this. Do you think that Sanders is the Democrat version of Trump? Because I think it's a misunderstanding.
Well, he's got a following and he leads a movement. But it's a movement mainly of young people who want things for free.
Correct.
Bernie's promise is free university education, free healthcare, free everything, and no one's going to pay. And the group he's appealing to, I can't remember the last recession, so they like this enticement. But at the end of the day, the idea that a socialist is going to be elected as President of the United States is ridiculous. There's no constituency in Middle America for this stuff. It's hardly surprising he likes Castro. That's his sort of guy, you know. What about North Korea?
Yeah.
That's his
He
type.
honeymooned in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, well, that's right, and he never came back. So, you know, that's what Bernie's on about. But Bernie does, unlike the other Democrats, he does lead a movement. He gets a lot of energy and people to these rallies, and he's the front runner. Now, yeah, I get the feeling increasingly that no one's going to catch him. But they get to the convention and the Democrat establishment don't want him. We know that for sure. Maybe they have a contested convention and they spear him in the back because he's not actually, he's an independent from Vermont. Well, he's not actually a Democrat.
And nobody brings this up. That, by the way, after when he ran for the presidency in 2016, he goes back into the Senate where he went back to being an independent.
Yeah, and people didn't come out and vote for Hillary and she's still dirty about that. But my favourite moment in recent times is Bloomberg versus Warren. And Bloomberg is the first candidate in history who paid $500 million to be scalped by a fake Indian. I've got to credit the guy on Fox who said that.
It was
a
very
good line, isn't
that's
it?
very clever.
Has that been said on your show?
No. That sounds like a Greg Gutfeld line. That's very clever. That's very good. Troy, also what I think people need to understand is that it's easy to turn around and say, geez, what a potential shit show this guy is. But I was having a look at a whole bunch of battleground state polling, right? So say essentially the 6 states that are the swing or marginal seats, as we would call them here in Australia, right? So Ohio, Florida, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Trump's only leading in one of those right now. Now, I get it. It's different about running against smoke, which is Trump versus anyone else. But should people be careful about the automatic idea that this guy is just too crazy to handle?
Well, look, I've made my view known in a column and also on this show that I think Donald Trump is vulnerable, and that's one of the reasons why, because he's not leading in a lot of those battleground states or in national polls. But I've also made the point, I think, that Bernie Sanders would be toxic to the American electorate. I agree with Mark 100% there. And, you know, I'm not someone who's ever owned a Che Guevara T-shirt. I could never understand the idolisation of Fidel Castro's Cuba. In fact, I once wrote a column revealing that Bill Shorten had gone to see Fidel Castro speak in Cuba and was raving about it. And he was dirty with me for writing that. But it was true. And so a lot of the centre-left, love Castro, and Sanders is one of them. But there's no constituency for a socialist candidate. But look, he's running away with the nomination, although there has been a little bit of a bump in Joe Biden's level of support in South Carolina, which will be Sunday our time, decided. So that is his firewall, as he says, and maybe that will be the start of gaining some delegates. And Bloomberg is rising in some of the other states as well, like New York and California.
But what idiot would vote for him? I mean, what is there to get fired up about that?
It looks to me like Sanders is running away with the nomination, and that to me looks like Donald Trump's more than likely to get elected. But this contested convention, which we talked about before any of the primaries or caucuses, looks more and more likely as well.
Rita, tomorrow, middle of the day, is yet another one of these debates, and all of the sort of, again, the people clutching their pearls like the Morning Joe people and all of that, and super American political nerds know who we're talking about here. All of these people say that, well, hang on, great to see Mike Bloomberg getting beaten up, but tomorrow it's going to be, 5-on-1, everyone's sort of having a whack away at Bernie Sanders. But I don't imagine Bernie Sanders is just going to stand there and say nothing like Mike Bloomberg did. Instead, he's going to be pretty able to shove back against a few of these people. He has been in politics for about 40 years.
He has been. He hasn't achieved much, but he's been there for 40 years.
Hey, name 2 post officers. Relax.
Well, there's that. I don't see him as the Democrats' Donald Trump. I see him as the Democrats' Jeremy Corbyn, or the Americans' Jeremy Corbyn. He is very much of the same, cut from the same cloth. He surrounds himself with some really awful individuals who believe some terrible things, and I think there's a sinister element to him that isn't fully explored, because he's got this sort of lovable persona where, he's like a dottery old grandpa or something, and you don't sort of listen to the fact that he didn't just praise Cuba's literacy programs, he also praised their value system, and he praised the USSR and Nicaragua, and, he hasn't seen a communist socialist regime that he hasn't liked. But yeah, he is a fighter, and if they come for him at the debate, he is not going to just stand there like Bloomberg, like a deer in the headlights. He is going to know what to say. And when was it Elizabeth Warren went for him, I don't know if you recall, at that debate that CNN ran, where she came at him with accusations of sexism, that he had said that a woman couldn't win, his support increased dramatically. And I think hopefully the Democrats are smart enough to know that if they all attack him, that it's just going to increase sympathy for him, and it's probably going to raise his stocks. So they'd want to go about it in a smarter fashion.